Hey gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and today I'm going to be reviewing Siege of Valeria. This is a quick and tricky little tower defense game designed by Glenn Flaherty, and it's part of the Valeria game series. Alright, so here is a full setup of Siege of Valeria. This is a tower defense game where basically we're trying to keep our tower safe through an onslaught of monsters coming our way. So as usual, there's one way to win the game, and then there are several ways to lose it. So our goal is to get rid of all of these siege engines. So we start with 5 in the 5th row, and then we have a whole deck of siege engines that we need to go after in the course of the game. So our goal is to get rid of all the siege engines. Their goal is to prevent us from doing that in one of 3 ways. One way to lose the game is for a siege engine to make it all the way to the front line, which is called the vanguard in the game, and then into the turn there so that it would advance onto one of our turrets. So if that happens, the siege engine busts through the wall, all the monsters do too, and we lose. The second way to lose is through just damage to one of the turrets. So each of these turrets has spaces for damage. Once the turret takes a 4th damage, then we're done. We will lose the game. The wall is breached. The enemies flow in. And then the third way for us to lose the game is for us to run out of troops in the troop deck. So the siege engines are reinforced by these enemies, these monsters. And basically, if we run out of them, it means that we didn't get to all the siege engines in time. So we also have to make sure that we're being timely about our destruction of the siege engines. One thing that's very interesting about this game is that your troops start out as your enemies in the game. However, once you defeat them, they also have an interesting power at the bottom that you can then use immediately once they are destroyed. So actually, I also have an opening hand that's just 2 cards from the troop deck. And I have 2 cards that I can automatically use for their powers. So I have a Troll Brute. So if I play this card, I discard it, I can change 1 die to a result of 6, which is pretty cool. And then I also have an Ifrit Enflammé, and this will let me spend a +2 with a holy die in order to overkill an adjacent siege engine, which makes it easier for me to destroy siege engines, which is pretty great. So the game has a couple of different strategic layers because on the one hand, you just need to focus on getting things out of these front rows where they're going to damage your turrets. But on the other, you need to be thinking about the siege engines. And then the third thing you have to think about, am I destroying the troops that are going to give me the abilities that I most need in order to succeed in this game? So you're thinking about kind of multiple things as you play, and I think that that's really cool. So let's just work through a turn, and then I'll give you some final thoughts. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to roll our dice. This is our dice supply. And so that's actually a fine starting roll. Then you have to resolve the siege engines. And basically, all of our cards are going to be laid out on a 5x5 grid. And depending on which row the siege engines have advanced to, they will or will not be able to be in range of us and exercise their powers. The other thing that's interesting is that we can attack siege engines that are in range of us. So basically, if they can hit us, we can hit them. But if we can't hit each other, then we're going to have to do something creative to get those siege engines. So here we have Gargan's Eye. It is not currently active because it's in the 5th row. And as you can see, that is black on this card. It is active in the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd rows. So we got to watch out soon. But it forces you to spend 1 red and 1 blue die. This absolutely sucks. I hate Gargan's Eye. We got to get it out of there. It's got to go. We have a Catapult. It's also not going to activate. It won't activate in this row or the next, but as it gets closer to us, it's going to force us to reroll 1/6. Here we have the Incendiaries, and these are what's going to cause us some real pain this particular round because they're active in all rows, and they force me to reroll 1/5. So basically, one of these 5s is going to have to get rerolled, and I can pick which one it is. So let's just do that now. We're activating, so we'll reroll this red 5. All right, well, I still got a 5, so take that. Incendiaries. Harumph. That's a lot of 5s. All right. Then we have this breach tower, and it doesn't do anything to us until it's in the front 2 rows, but it's still a pain. It lets you load in 1 adjacent troop card. So basically, it just makes itself more powerful as it gets closer to you. And then here we have an Ogre's Reach, also active in the first 2 rows, but not in the back 3. But it makes you add 2 damage to the turret below. So basically, even before it actually reaches your turret when it would win the game, it can do so much damage to your turret that it can cause you to lose anyway if you're not doing something about it. So we've got our work cut out for us with these lovely little siege engines here. The other thing that's interesting about the siege engines, and we'll talk about this in relation to how we kill the monsters, is that the value on your dice you need to achieve in order to destroy the siege engines changes depending on what row they're in. So rows where they're closer to you, typically they're easier to hit, although that's not true for Gargan's Eye. and they typically become more hittable as they approach. Although, as you can see, it can take a while for Breach Tower and Ogre's Reach to dip down to like a lower value, and by then you maybe don't want them that close to your tower. So you're gonna have to think about what else you could do. So we've activated our siege engines, and then we're gonna do an event. So this is an event deck where we resolve one event. Some of these are fun, some of these are not so fun. Let's see what happens. Fools rush in. The orc shaman appears from a cloud of green smoke. He pulls a vial of something from his pouch, uncorks it, finds a weakened soldier, and proceeds to force black liquid down their throat. The orc shaman sinks into the earth and disappears. The soldier who is fed the black liquid lets out a blood-curdling cry of fury. So now we're going to add 2 strength to the weakest enemy in the vanguard that has a red flag on it. So basically what that means is the vanguard is the front row. We have to get 2 of these like little strength bolstering tokens and put it on whoever appears weakest, which is clearly the goblin warrior. So this goblin warrior just became more annoying by 2. So now that we've done all those things, we can resolve our actions, and this is really where the meat of the game is. So I waited to explain this part because it's a good time. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to use our dice to take out whatever we can, and we can also use the actions on our cards to do that. Additionally, cards that you acquire by defeating enemies are immediately available, so I can kill someone, take their card, and use the effect right away. But basically, we're going to proceed until we've either used all of our dice or there's just nothing else to do with the dice that we have left. You'll notice these dice come in 2 colors. These red dice are like strength dice, basically, and then the blue dice are called holy dice, and they're essentially magic. And what's interesting is that you can never come at a troop with only a blue die. However, the blue dice have purposes. Sometimes they're a requirement to kill something. So for example, if you look at this Gargan Priest, we need at least a 3 red and 2 blue value on our dice in order to take the Gargan Priest out. However, in this case, that would force us to overpay, which is something I want to come back to. But for the moment, the thing to know is that some enemies have a cost that's just red, so that's just strength, and sometimes they have a red and a blue cost where you need to be able to provide separate values from your dice types. However, the holy dice are interesting because they can't be used on their own. Sometimes they're needed to pay a blue cost, but they can also help you with these only red cost cards, because as long as you spend 1 red die, you can add the total of a blue die to that strength. Let's think about how we want to spend these dice. So we've got these guys in the front that I'd like to get rid of. We have to be paying attention to their abilities, and if there's any way I can get at a siege engine, that'd be pretty cool. So for example, I can go at incendiaries if I want to, because if it can hit me, then I can hit it. But to get to 14, like I can do that with these dice. That's possible. At the same time, I'm not sure I want to do that because that would be using all my dice, and I have immediate threats up here to cope with. The other thing I want to be paying attention to is that it's good to kill things with exact values unless you have an ability called Overkill. So for example, this Ifrit Enflammé lets you spend +2 of your blue dice value, you overpay by 2, to overkill an adjacent siege engine. So basically, if I can get a siege engine kind of down here and kill something adjacent to it, and I can overkill that thing by +2, then the siege engine is just out, and I don't have to pay the full price for that siege engine. So you also want to be paying attention to overkills because they make these really cool cheap kills if you set up the right combos. So right now I can't do it, but I'm looking to overkill because otherwise I'm just wasting. I have a great set of dice here, and I don't want to spend a blue 4 and a red 5 and waste all those pips on just this Gargan Priest. Even though his effect is really cool, you can block the effect of 1 siege engine. That is a bummer because I would have spent all these pips on something I didn't want to. And that may be an issue that I'm just about to have because I've just got all these high dice and not a whole lot to do with them. So that's kind of tough. I don't have anything that's going to give me overkill in this first row, so I'm just going to have to kill whatever I can and use my dice as efficiently as possible. So I think one thing I'd like to do is I'm going to go ahead and just spend 1 of these 5s to take out this Goblin Warrior because it's a perfect 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 damage. I've used that die, so I'll put it to the side for now. And then the Goblin Warrior comes into my hand and I can use his power, which is ±1 to 1 die. So now I've got a hand and this dude's out of the way. But I've still got all these luscious dice left to work with. So what do I want to do? So typically you can only attack front cards. So this is now a front card, so I can go at the Red Witch if I want to, which is kind of neat. So basically my options of attack are the cards at the front or siege engines that are in range. That leaves only this one for now. So one thing I definitely want to do is I do like this red witch. I want to gain her because if I get her, I can gain and roll 1 blue die and then gain 1 champion. So it gives me some extra dice to kind of keep flowing with, which is neat. And I'll just do it this turn to show you how it works. So let's use these 2 dice here because I'm only overkilling her by 1. That's not too bad. So these dice are spent. I can pick up her card. And then I'm actually going to spend it right away because it gives me the opportunity to show you something else in the rules of the game that I want to show you. So I can gain and roll 1 extra blue die. So it was only 1. That's not super thrilling, but I have cards that I could do something about that with if I want. And then I get to gain 1 champion. So the champions are, this will go to discard. The champions are an element of the game that I also want to show you. Basically, when you get a champion, you can draw them. You can put them in a turret of your choice. So let's just put him here. This is Sir Quentin. And basically, when I flip him, he's got a flippable power. So once a turn, I can do +2 against a siege engine, which is fantastic. So I'll just put him here because I want to get that Gargan's Eye in the near future because I don't like it. So let's make arrangements to destroy it soon. And we can do that with the help of Sir Quentin. So one thing that's interesting too is that as turrets take damage, that once they have 3 damage, they can no longer hold a champion, which is why this damage overlaps here. But for now, we're all good. We're healthy so far. All right, so let's keep playing. Let's go ahead and spend this Troll Brute to change this die to a 6 because why not? I can do whatever I want. And then we're going to kill some more stuff. So let's take care of the siege engine first. I want to take out the incendiaries. And so I'm actually going to play this blue die and these 2 reds for a total of 15 in order to take out this siege engine. So I can attack this one, but no others because it can attack me. So if it can see me, I can see it. We'll take it out. So these dice will be spent. The siege engine will be gone. And then the reward of a siege engine is another champion, which is really nice. So we'll discard this, draw another champion. This one is an Adept Imogen. So if I flip her, she gives me +2 blue against a red enemy, which is neat. So let's go ahead and put her, I got some strong red enemies here, so let's put her here. Let's do that. And then now that I've got this kind of 10 left, I'm going to have to just spend them both in overkill, so I just need to just kill the most powerful thing I can, probably. Or the best item. So I think what I might do, though, actually, even though I don't want to, is I'm going to actually just really overkill this Gargan Priest because I do want his ability. So I'm going to spend these 2 dice. I'm going to get him because he blocks the effect of 1 siege engine, and the Gargan Eye is going to move into my range on the next turn, and I don't want to blow dice on this stupid Gargan Eye siege engine. So I have this hand of cards that I'm working with. My dice are spent. My turn is done, and then I'm going to show you how to set up for another turn. So first we're going to activate the Vanguard. So here's how this is going to work. If there was a siege engine in the Vanguard, we would lose the game, but there's not, so we're okay. Then the Vanguard troops basically move into our wall. But basically we're going to add 1 damage to my Vanguard wall in front of each troop who's in that front row. So sadly I took some damage on this turn. So it'll be 1 damage for this card, 1 damage for this card, and then 1 damage here. Bummer. And then all of these guys get discarded. So I don't get their benefits. They don't go into my hand. They're just gone. So they died, but like, you know, it's not really a death that's useful to me in any sort of way. Then what happens is you advance the battlefield. So these all come down. Everything moves down to kind of fill empty spaces. So these will come all the way down, and so will the turret. This is all going to come down, so will the turret. The siege engine, I really mean. This will come down. This will come down. And these will all come down. So basically you slide down everything, siege engines and all. That's how they get closer to you and activate on those closer rows. So everything's been advanced. Now we're going to reinforce the battlefield. So we add a siege engine in row 5 of each column that does not already have a siege engine. So this one lost its siege engine, so that one's going to come out. And it's a trebuchet. That is terrifying. So we should probably do something about that too. Yikes. Then we're going to reinforce the battlefield. So I'm going to draw 5 of my troops to reinforce. And they're going to start by filling in the empty spaces and then coming up the top row. And they go from left to right. So it'll go like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. And actually it's only 4. I was thinking about row 5, and it's only 4 cards. So we got 4 reinforcements. And so that is what a reinforced battlefield is going to look like. Then we will roll our dice. This is an extra. Here's our dice pool. And we're going to start all over again. So that is how this game works. And it's pretty good fun. So let's take you to some final thoughts about that. All right, so now for some final thoughts. I will admit I was a little nervous when I first got this game. It's my friend Glenn's first published game. He is somebody I really like and care about and talk to a lot. And I was like, ooh, what if I don't like his game? But fortunately, I had nothing to worry about at all. This game is really good. I will admit I've not had a huge interest in the Valeria games overall. And I played this game because I like Glenn. And I really like this game. It is going to stay in my collection for sure. So while I was over there looking at all those war games, like, this was getting made, and I'm really happy. So, and so this is a really nice tower defense game. I like tower defense. I enjoy dealing with, like, kind of onslaught of enemy hordes, trying to figure out how to handle my resources. You know, this game is really ticking a lot of boxes for me. But I think what it's doing the best is a combination of giving me really interesting card choices to deal with. Like, I really enjoy working through a hand of cards and trying to wring as much as possible out of them. That's something that brings me a specific kind of gameplay joy. And this is offering that in droves. And I also like that it gives me lots of interesting decisions to make within a relatively simple game space. You know, a turn of this game, as you've just seen, isn't that complicated. What's complicated is figuring out which enemies to kill when and why. You have to go after the siege towers in order to win the game. So long term, they're important. Short term, you have to keep an eye on what's going on in your vanguard, because that's your front row, and you have to be really careful about not letting things get too crazy down there, or else you're going to lose anyway, no matter how great you do with the siege engines. And you also have to think about which of the enemies are you going to try to kill, and are you going to do it based on the most, like do I just take the most possible enemies out of the vanguard in order to, you know, make my turret damage stay down? Or do I go for the things that are giving me the best cards and then hope that that's going to lead to a combo and I'm making a sacrifice for, like, a better future play? So those are the kind of decisions that are going to this game that are just absolutely doing it for me. And I am so happy to see something like this come out in a relatively compact box with relatively few components. Like, this is a lot with some cards and some dice and a few tokens, and that makes me really happy. I will say I do have a couple quibbles with it, but they mostly just come from the game's table presence and the fact that I am messy. I am terrible at keeping things lined up in a straight row. And so I'm just a slob, and I really struggle with keeping this game looking nice and kind of like being in control on the table. And like, while I realized this game was definitely meant to be lower profile than this, it would have been kind of cool to have some sort of like playmat to put things on. But overall, I think this game is, in terms of its size, in terms of the time it takes up, in terms of the problems that it presents to you as a player, this is a really great, like, weeknight, Saturday afternoon, afternoon off kind of solo game where you want to kind of crunch your brain a little bit, maybe not too much, and really, like, just get a lot of enjoyment out of doing the best that you can with what the game presents to you. And so Siege of Valeria, I really recommend this, actually. I think that if you like tower defense at all, that you're gonna like this game. I'm really happy with how it turned out. And seriously, Glenn, congrats, man. This is a very awesome first published game. I remember looking at your prototypes over the last several years and wondering where you would go. And man, keep going. This is good. So thanks so much, everybody, for watching. Please like, subscribe, comments, maybe support me on Patreon if you're feeling generous. And most of all, happy gaming.